I patched this wall up, and all I did was mix the cement up and I packed it in because the wall ain't pushing. And if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. Every 5 or 7 years I might stop by and spend an hour here and just pack it, because there's really nothing wrong with it. The wall ain't pushing over, and we don't want to do any overkill. So there's a lot of different controversies on what cement. I'm going to show you a couple other jobs, and I'll show you where I do wet it and what cements I use. So here we go. Well, today we just got a bunch of cracks here. Not a big deal. We're just going to kind of dig them out if they're bad. If not, we're just going to pack it. We're not going to make a big deal out of it. Let's take a look at it. So see this? I'm just going to dig in there best we can. This is an old wall. It's all filled with dirt. We're not going to go crazy with it. We're just going to patch it up. This is all mine rock. It's conglomerate. It's no big deal. So that's how we're going to do. And brush it out and pack it. And we're just going to brush it all out of there. We're not going to waste a lot of time here because the whole wall is failing. All we're going to do is make it better. Now I'm going to mix it up. Here's my mix. 1, 2 parts Mason sand. See it? Then I'm using Portland cement. And let's do 3/4 of Portland. 3/4 of Portland. And just to appease the lime guys, I'm going to take 1/4 of mortar and 1/4 of mortar. That's my mix. It's 2 to 1. So that's about it. You see, that's pretty stiff. That's stiff, but that's the way we want it for this job. Alright, so now we're just going to get our hand, get the cement, and shove it in there. Just like that. You take your slicker and force it in farther. But all we're doing is packing it. Not going to make a big deal out of it. It's only a crack in a wall. That's all it is. Use your hand and pack it in there. And every once in a while, get your slicker and shove it in as far back as it will go. That's it. You got to keep the cement. See, it's kind of almost sandy like that. Pick it up from the bottom. Shove it back in. Just like that. Smooth it out with your hand. You got a hole over here. Same thing. Want to get your trowel like this for the flat ones? Get it in there. You can do that too. See that? Fill it up to the top. No big deal. Over here, got to go sideways a little bit. Shove it in. Don't try to make a big project out of it. A lot of guys try to make a big project out of it. It's not doing anything. It's not doing anything for the strength of the wall. You're just patching holes up. That's all you're doing. And here's the owner. She's doing it herself. She's just going over the cracks. That's all. Not making a big deal out of it. It's only, the wall isn't pushing. It's just stress cracks. So this here we have a little bit of push. And they got a stone missing here. So let's look. It's about this big by that big. I'm going to go up in the woods and see if I can find something. So we got a lot of stones laying here. Let's see if this one works. Alright, so I found 2 stones. This one, that one will fit right in there. I'm just going to throw it in, pack it in there. You have to make a big deal out of it. I'm going to pack it. See that? Pack it. Like that. And then we're going to shove this stone in. Like that. Pack it on the bottom. We want to use a little shim to hold it there. And I'll shove this one in. Like that. then we'll pack the top. That's all. We'll just make it a big deal out of it. That's it. As long as the hole's filled, we're good. I'm only here for 35-40 minutes, and I got the whole wall done as far as anything serious. So I'm just going to brush it off like this a little bit. And that's it. And then we're going to paint it with mud. This is all good in here. And then we got to get down here like this. And we'll brush that off like that. And then we're going to paint it with mud. You see this? This is from my dad's garden. All it is mud. So it makes good mud. And just stir it up like this and get some mud. And that's going to stain all that cement. And you won't even know we were here. Mud. Now you can see here where the lady, and it dried a little whiter here, did it? So we just get this and we paint it with mud, just like that. That's going to hide all that newness. Over here, we just paint it with mud. See that? Just paint it with mud. Alright, I painted it with the mud. Now it's going to not shine like it's brand new. So that's it. Just hit the big spots. So I finished that wall, and now we're going to look at another wall. I'm going to do an example of where I pack it, and then the third example I'll show you where I wet it. So here we go. Now we're looking at an old wall. You can see the flags up there. It's an old cemetery. There's a couple of these pushing out, and if you look down here at the rest of the wall, it's all bulging out. And so you could spend, what they did too is, you see the concrete cap, they put that through some years back just to hold it together. But if I was going to fix this whole wall, I'm going to show you what I would do with these two stones. These are the best two examples. Just going to pull this stone out like this and throw it on the ground. And this one, throw it on the ground too. You can see how they backed it up. You see how they backed it up? That's the way they did it in old days. Let me scrape this out. And they didn't use a lot of mortar because it was too expensive. This is like a depression wall. So we're going to keep it in that kind of mode. All we're going to do is put it right back. See the old lime here? I know everybody hates to see, the lime guys don't want to see that, but it don't hold up. You got to put Portland in it. You don't want to hear that. Here's what we're going to do. You don't have to wet anything because concrete is a binder. Now we're just going to take our cement, because it's pretty hard. See it? See it? It's like clay, like Play-Doh. Pack it in there. We're not going to stop this wall from moving. We're just going to patch it up. So I'm going to take this, shove this right back in there, right the way it was. Need a little more in there. Perfect. And we're going to take this, build this up here, just like this. And I don't have enough cement, I don't think. Shove this up here. And I'm going to shove that. So we're going to pack this up here. It's going to be close. And then, so I'm just going to shove it in Hope it goes in. Of course, you always have to have some trouble. That's it. That's where it goes. And then we're just going to pack it in the back as much we can. No big deal. See that? We're going to pack it in. We're just packing it. It's almost like a dry pack because we don't want to make a mess. Now you're saying to me, Mike, how come you're not wetting it first? That's a good question. And the reason is because we don't want to make a mess. And this is not one of those situations that you would be doing that. And I'm going to show you one of those situations right after this where you do wet it. Because every job's a little different. If people try to tell you, you got to do this, you got to do that, half of them don't know. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep packing it until there's no space left behind. Alright, we're using our rubber glove and our hand. And if you wanted to sneak up and do some others, it's okay because we're packing it. We're not trying to make it stick and using the water. We're just going to use our finger just like that. Of course, you got to have the rubber glove on. Just like that. See that? This is not a big deal. We don't want to make it a big deal. And then just get the brush, you go around it. If you're worried about too much on the side, you could use the sponge and make it better. Now the rest of this wall is bulging out. Now should I go fix it? I did a video, it's called Retaining Walls Part 14, where I ripped it down and I used the same techniques. I packed it. I didn't make it use the water. Now we're going to take this sponge and just go on the outside a little bit and clean it up because I did make a little bit of a mess. That's it. You can ask me, why didn't you wet everything first? Because you don't do it in this kind of job, you're going to make a mess. We don't have nothing here, hoses or anything, you don't have to do it. Now we got all that done. Now what do? Now we get the mud, because we want to hide all that newness. We're going to paint it with mud, just like that. That's going to stain it to make that look old. All right, get the picture? Mud. Then we'll come back and look at it another day, see how we did. Put the mud in there, making it look old. You don't want that newness shining through. It looks like a cheap job. There we go. All right, done. Well, I'm back about a week later, and you could see where I patched it, and the mud trick kind of disguised it pretty good. Now that's an example of when I pack it. Now let's go look at an example where I wet it first and just kind of fill the joints in. Now we got an old school here. It's brick on top and it's stone on the bottom. That's the way the old timers did it, because stone lasts longer than brick. And we just got a couple pieces here that we want to fix. Now I'll show you when I use the water. Now I just get paintbrush, just go over the sides and you wet it first. That's an instance where you would use the water. And you make it a little wetter and you put it in. Now they did a whole church in Scranton basically the same way. Let's go up here to this part. to have the dogs going. So you wet it first like that. Get in there and wet it first. And that's what you would do if you want it to stick over other cement. It has to be wet. You see it wet there? And you could do it, but you won't do it when you're building those big walls like previous. You pack it. But this here, you're trying to make it stick. And I'm trying to point that out. Okay, a little wetter. Like that. See that? Just a little wetter. And it sticks up in there. Get it in. Like that. That's what you would do. Get it in. Now this mix has a little more lime in it. This has 50% lime and 50% Portland. And I used, see that? That's all. You can spend a lot of time. You don't have to rub your fingers across it like that. Use your hand if you have to. It's going to dry fast because it's thin. See that? Then we go down here. I'm just going to get the sponge and water. Go over it. Like that. I'm done. Up here, same thing. Go over it. And look at it, blends right in there. It's not a big deal. Anytime you're going to do a job like this, go around the back of the building and practice. That's it. I'm going to talk about those jobs a little bit, and I'm going to get into a little more detail about repointing walls. Now, in those first two cases, they were retaining walls. And in Pennsylvania, there's three types of retaining walls. There's the type that fell down, the type that are falling down, and the type that are going to fall down. Because you can't put all this weight behind these walls, and when it freezes in the winter, it pushes those walls. And a lot of times, the only thing holding those walls together is the dirt's been there a long time, and all the roots and everything that are in it is actually holding those walls up. So when someone calls me up and says, I want you to fix my wall, I tell them the way it is. I tell them the truth. Look, that wall ain't going to last forever. I could spend weeks on that wall. It's not going to make any more difference. I'll just patch up the big holes. I'll do a little job for you. Take you a couple hours. 5 years later, maybe I'll come back and do some more. I don't want to waste your money. You got to be honest with them. A lot of people say, well, how come you don't wet it first? I did a video out. It's called Should I Wet It First? When you're doing regular work or you're patching up like that, sometimes you wet it and sometimes you don't. So watch that video. When you're plastering, you wet it first because you want it to get in there. But when you're just laying or you're tuck pointing, you don't do that because it's just going to make a mess. And that's the biggest reason. What people don't understand is cement is not a glue, it's a binder. And all it is it's limestone that they crush up, that they heat up. When you add the water, it reforms. It's a binder. It's not a glue. When you wet it, that gets in there until it pours more and it sticks better, but it's a binder. It's not a glue. Now, a lot of people get on to me and say, well, what cement should I use? I heard you shouldn't use Portland. Let's first go to the Limestone Institute Handbook, and we'll look at that first. Now, if you go to the Indiana Limestone Handbook, and you go to page 22, here it is right here. Portland cement and lime mortars are mixed with 1 part cement, 1 part lime, and 6 parts sand, all by volume. So what does it say? It says 1 part cement, 1 part lime, and 6 parts sand. So basically what they were using was 6 parts sand, 1 part Portland, and 1 part lime. And that equals to, if you look above the paragraph, ASTMC, which is the American Standards for Testing Materials C270, type and mortar. That equals a type and mortar. And that's 6 parts sand, 1 part Portland, and 1 part mortar. Now where I live I don't use that because it doesn't hold up. And when I lay on the flat, I just use Portland and sand. If it's stone on the flat, Portland and sand. If I don't use it, I'll be back fixing it in 5 years. It depends on the weather in your area. Now we're going to go to the National Washington Cathedral. And I did a video down there with Chuck Harding, who was a famous preacher in Washington, D.C. And we went in there and we talked to Joe Alonzo, which is the mason, the main mason, and he explained what they use on a cathedral.
Okay, so you want to know about our cement and mortar and all that?
Yep.
Yeah, well, this cathedral, even though it's, we call ourselves a 14th century Gothic cathedral, this cathedral was built in the 20th century, and from day one, from 1907, when the first stone was laid, as you know, Portland cement was around. So this cathedral was built using, modern Portland cement as we know it. And it is interesting, though, to see the building over the years, different parts of the building as the building evolved. The early parts of the building, they used a very, very rich, cement-rich mortar mix. Super hard. I found a spec from 1915 when they were building the east end of the cathedral, and the mortar mix in 1915 was 2 parts sand, 1 part white Portland cement, and 1 part lime. So that is one super hard mortar mix. And over the years, you can see, as you know, too hard of a mortar will create problems, and they've had problems over the years. Somewhere around the 1950s, 60s, they softened up the mix to more of a type N masonry cement, but it's still hard, still a very hard mix. Yep. And with our restoration work now, with all the earthquake repair and restoration work that we use, we're using a lot of the bag mixes, the restoration mortars, that I think are better now. The thinking, as you know, has gone full circle from super hard. I used to work with the old stonemasons and masons. Oh yeah, put some more cement in there, make it harder. Harder is better. So I like to think this cathedral is almost like a museum of mortar, throughout the 20th century. But it is, a modern Portland cement-based mortar mix in this building.
And what would the mix be that you use now?
Oh, the normal mix now is, like a 6-1-1, 5-1-1, stuff like that, but it's definitely a lot softer than it was back in the day.
Right.
And we use also, like I say, the bag mixes, the Edison mixes, and the Jan mortar mixes too, the restoration mortars and things like that. And we'll mix up our own, but we definitely mix them up softer than the old timers did.
So after watching that, you got to understand that a guy like that has been at that cathedral for all them years, right to the end of when they put the last stone on. The guy's got to know what he's talking about. What did he say? 6 sand, 1 Portland, 1 lime. Or sometimes he said 5 sand, 1 Portland, 1 lime. If I was mixing in northeastern Pennsylvania, I use 4 sand, 1 Portland, and 1 lime. The lime guys don't like to hear that, but I'm the guy that's got to go around fixing everything all the time. And when he said 5 sand, 1 Portland, 1 lime in Washington, D.C., I wouldn't doubt if that's the outside, when he's doing the outside joints. And don't forget, those limestone joints are only this big. When I'm fixing a wall, they're this big. And if I leave that mortar in there, or that lime in there, it's going to fall apart. You've seen all my videos before. That's my opinion. And one of the rules of thumb is whatever you're doing, the cement should be softer than the brick or the stone. It should be softer. Now how do you determine that? See, it's softer. Well, you get your mix, you put it in, you put it there for about 5 days and you test it. Even though cement takes 30 days to really hit its full strength, that should give you a good indication. The rule of thumb is your cement or your mortar or whatever you're using should be softer than the material that you're fixing. Now, brick by nature is soft. Limestone is one of the softest stones they build cathedrals out of. So that's the way I look at it. Now there's a church in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we're going to look at that. I'm going to show you what they used. Now the Masons repointed this whole building just used 3 to 1 of that Portland lime base mixed. So if you'll notice on that bag, it said color mortar blend. It says Portland cement dash lime mortar type N type S. So they used Portland, they used lime, and then you add the sand to it. And they told me basically the same thing. Sometimes it's 6 to 1 or sometimes it's 5 to 1. So everybody thinks you can't add Portland to restoration buildings, but the truth is they do, and because people found out if you don't do it, you're going to have to keep doing it so many years. The Portland adds stability to it. That's my opinion. Again, one last thing, I did some work with a guy called Wayne Ferree, who was actually a carver on the National Washington Cathedral. And I have some videos on my channel of him doing work, and he has his own channel, Wayne Ferree. So I hope you got something from this. I did videos on what cement should I use before, and I just want to confirm it. A lot of guys ask me, can I use type N or can I use type S? Well, you can, as long as it's softer than the material, because if it's not softer and it cracks, it's going to crack right through the material, and that's what you're trying to avoid. So I hope that helps. One thing I want you to remember is the old school masons, the old timers, would make their own mixes for their own area of the country. It's not black and white. You just can't say you have to use N mortar through the whole country or S mortar through the whole country. The old timers would make their own mixes. That's why I always say check what the local guys are using, and that's going to tell you the truth. I hope it helps. I'm Mike Haduck. I'll see you next video.